My wife didn't leave me at home. She didn't leave me in a parking lot or over text or in our kitchen with the refrigerator humming like it was trying to offer emotional support. She left me at our kids' school, with teachers watching. And if you think that sounds dramatic, let me clarify. It was the kind of school where the walls are covered in hand-drawn rainbows and kindness rules, and the staff smiles so professionally you start wondering if they have a training module called How to Look Compassionate while secretly judging everyone's parenting. So yeah, that place. We'd been together 12 years, married for 10, one child. From the outside, we were what people call a nice family. We weren't loud. We weren't chaotic. We weren't the couple that argued in grocery aisles like a live podcast. We kept things contained. We did the adult thing, which, as it turns out, is sometimes just a fancy way of saying we kept the cracks behind closed doors so the neighbors could keep believing in love. The school was new building, new teachers, new routines, a fresh start for our kid, and, apparently, a stage for my wife. It was a school performance night, the classic one. Folding chairs, a little stage. Kids dressed like animals or planets or whatever their teacher decided would build confidence. Parents arrived early, clutching phones like they were about to film a bank heist. Teachers floated around smiling, that calm, professional energy that says, "I have seen everything, and I will remember your child's name long after I forget yours." I noticed the drawings in the hallway first. Crayon families taped to the walls. Stick figures holding hands. Big smiles. A suspicious number of families had dogs. Like, statistically impossible amounts of dogs. Our kid tugged my sleeve and pointed to one of the drawings. "Mine's over there." It was a picture of 3 stick figures. One small, 2 tall, all holding hands. The tall one on the left had a giant grin. The tall one on the right had also a giant grin. In the center was our kid, with a smile so big it took up half the face. I felt something tighten in my chest. Not sadness, not anger. Just that weird parental mix of pride and fear. Pride because your kid sees you as safe. Fear because you know how fragile safe actually is. My wife stood beside me like she was waiting for an elevator. Not angry, not obviously upset, just reduced. Short answers, no eye contact. I leaned in and kept my voice light. "You okay?" She blinked like I'd asked her to solve a math problem. "Fine." Fine, or fine like you're about to tell me my existence is a personal inconvenience? She didn't smile. Not even a pity smile. Nothing. "Don't start here," she said. That was the first red flag. Not because she said it. Couples say that all the time. But because she said it the way someone talks to a dog that's about to bark. "Don't start. Sit. Stay. Be convenient." I looked around. Parents everywhere. Teachers everywhere. Kids darting around like caffeinated bees. This wasn't a place for adult drama. It was a place for off-key singing and parents pretending not to cry when their child forgets one line. So I gave her the benefit of the doubt. "Okay," I said. "I'm not starting anything. I'm literally here to applaud aggressively and embarrass our child like a responsible father." She exhaled through her nose, the closest thing to a laugh I got all night. Our kid bounced on their toes. "Are we sitting in the front?" "We're sitting where the view is good," I said. "Front row is for people who want to be in the splash zone." My kid laughed. My wife didn't. We found seats, 3rd row. Close enough to see the stage, far enough to avoid being recruited for volunteer work. That's a skill you learn in marriage. How to sit in a way that communicates, "I support education while also communicating. I will not be chairing the fundraiser committee unless you plan to sedate me first." The room smelled like glue sticks and stress. A teacher in a cardigan announced something cheerful about community and growth and how proud we are of every child. Parents clapped like trained seals. Kids wriggled. My wife sat stiff, hands clasped, eyes forward. I leaned over again. "You sure you're okay?" This time she looked at me finally, and her eyes had that flat calm people get right before they make a decision you can't undo. "Just get through tonight," she said. "Can you do that?" I stared at her. Get through a school play? I whispered. I've survived airport security with a toddler. This is basically a vacation. Her jaw tightened. I'm serious. So was I, just in a different way. All right, I said quietly. We'll get through it, whatever this is. The performance started. Kids walked out in a line. Some waved, some froze. One kid immediately started crying, which honestly set a realistic tone for adulthood. Our kid spotted us and lit up. That smile, the one that says, "You're here, so the world makes sense." I clapped. I mouthed, "You're doing great." My wife clapped too, but it felt automatic, like she was trying to keep the mask from slipping. Halfway through, a teacher came down the aisle, leaning in to whisper to parents. A woman with a calm face and sharp eyes, the kind of teacher who can stop a classroom riot using only silence. She stopped at our row. "Hi," she said softly. "You must be Nicole's parents." I stood a little, polite. "Yes, I'm—" My wife cut in immediately, with a smile that appeared out of nowhere. "Hi, yes, we're so happy to meet you. We've heard wonderful things." The teacher smiled back. "They've adjusted really well. Smart, kind, and very observant." I was about to make a joke, something like, "Yes, they observe my flaws with Olympic-level accuracy," when my wife shifted. Not a big movement, just a small step back, like she wanted space, or like she was separating herself from me in a way only I would notice. The teacher kept talking, praising our child, saying the usual things educators say to give parents relief. And then my wife did it. She didn't lower her voice. She didn't lean in. She didn't even pretend this was private. She looked at the teacher, then at me, then at the space between us like it was an open wound. And she said, clear as a school announcement, "I think it's time I stop pretending we're a family." The sentence didn't land like a bomb. It landed like glass. Sharp, quiet, everywhere. For half a second, I honestly thought I misheard her. That my brain had taken a perfectly normal sentence and translated it into emotional murder for fun. The teacher froze. Not metaphorically, actually froze. Her smile stayed on her face, but it lost all structural integrity, like a bridge that's still standing but no longer connected to land. "Oh," she said. That was it. Just oh. Around us the room didn't stop. Kids kept singing, parents kept filming. Someone laughed at a line that wasn't meant to be funny. But the space around us changed. You know how, when someone drops a plate in a restaurant, everyone pretends they didn't hear it, but suddenly nobody is chewing? That. The teacher looked at my wife, then at me, then at the floor. She cleared her throat like she was rebooting. Well, she said carefully, "this might be something you'd want to discuss later." My wife nodded, calm, centered, reasonable. "I am discussing it," she said. "I'm just being honest." Honest, that word again. She turned slightly toward me, not enough to face me, just enough to make me part of the presentation. "I don't think pretending helps anyone," she continued, "especially Nicole." There it was, the shield. Whenever someone drags a child into an adult decision, you know exactly what they're doing. They're not protecting the kid. They're protecting their image. I could feel the teacher shrinking into herself. This was not in the training manual. There was no checkbox for parent announces marital collapse mid-performance. The teacher tried again. "Maybe after the show?" she said gently. "Tonight is really about the children." My wife smiled at her, the soft, composed smile people use when they want to look emotionally evolved. "I'm not making a scene," she said. "I'm just stating where I am." I almost laughed, because if this wasn't a scene, I was curious what her definition of one was. Fireworks? Backup dancers? A smoke machine? I could feel eyes on us now, not staring, people are too polite for that, but aware. Peripheral vision attention, the kind you feel more than see. I became very aware of my posture, of my face. This was the moment where the script usually goes one of two ways. Option A. The husband reacts emotionally, raises his voice, tries to explain, looks unstable. Option B. The husband pleads, lowers his voice, looks weak. Either way, the verdict is the same. Problem man. I wasn't interested in either role. I looked at my wife. Really looked. She wasn't angry. She wasn't nervous. She was relieved. Like someone who had finally put down a bag they didn't want to carry anymore, and didn't care who it hit on the way down. Nicole was still on stage, singing, focused, proud, completely unaware that the foundation behind her had just shifted. The teacher hesitated, clearly uncomfortable, her eyes flicking between us like she was trying to locate the nearest emergency exit. Well, she said softly, perhaps you would prefer to discuss this later? My wife shook her head. No, she said calmly. It's fine. Then she turned slightly, not toward me but toward the teacher, and gestured in my direction with an open palm. Look at him, she said. The words landed heavier than the sentence before. He sits there in silence, she continued, her tone almost observational, looking surprised, like he's hearing this for the first time. She smiled faintly, as if she'd just made an insightful point. That's exactly the problem, she added. He always acts shocked when I finally say things out loud. I felt the space around us tighten. She wasn't speaking to me. She was speaking about me, to an audience. The teacher's smile faltered. She looked at me now, really looked, like she was suddenly unsure which of us she was supposed to be protecting from the other. I didn't move. I didn't correct her, didn't defend myself, didn't offer context she hadn't earned, because the moment I spoke, the story would become a debate. And she didn't want a debate. She wanted confirmation. The teacher glanced at the stage, then back at us, clearly searching for an exit that didn't exist. I'm going to check on the sound, she said quickly. And she left. Just like that. No judgment. No lecture. Just retreat. My wife exhaled and crossed her arms, turning fully toward me now. Well, she said quietly, that went about as well as it could. I blinked. Did it? I asked. Because from where I was sitting, you just announced the end of our marriage like it was a weather update. She frowned. Don't do this, she said. Not here. I tilted my head. Interesting, I said, because 5 seconds ago, here seemed perfectly acceptable. She ignored that. You're making this uncomfortable, she said. I let that sit for a moment. Because there it was. Not I hurt you. Not this was unfair. Not I chose the wrong place. No. You're making this uncomfortable. I haven't said anything, I replied. You've done all the talking. She looked at me like I'd missed the point. You didn't respond, she said. That's weird. I smiled slightly. Give it time, I said. The night's still young. Her eyes narrowed. Don't be sarcastic. I glanced at the stage again. Nicole waved at us mid-song. I waved back. Big smile. Enthusiastic dad energy. My wife watched me, confused. You don't get it, she said under her breath. This is hard for me too. That one almost got me. Not because it was convincing, but because it was so familiar. Hard for her. Always hard for her. I'm sure it is, I said. Breaking news usually is. She sighed. You always do this, she said. You make jokes when things are serious. No, I corrected gently. I make jokes when people try to control the narrative. She leaned closer. You could at least acknowledge what I said. I looked at her. Then I nodded. I understand, I said. 2 words. That was it. No argument, no defense, no counterattack, just acknowledgement. Her face changed instantly. Not relief, not satisfaction, confusion. Because that wasn't the response she'd rehearsed for. She'd prepared for resistance, for denial, for emotional labor. She wasn't prepared for acceptance. What does that mean? She asked. It means I heard you, I said, and I'm not going to fight you in front of our kids' choir. The silence between us thickened. Around us, applause erupted. One song ended. Another began. Parents cheered like nothing had happened. But my wife stared at me like she was waiting for the rest of the argument to arrive. It didn't. The performance ended the way all school performances end, with applause that feels a little too loud for what just happened on stage. Parents stood up, phones lowered. People stretched their legs like they'd been holding tension in places they didn't know existed. Kids waved. Teachers clapped enthusiastically, like volume could substitute for closure. Nicole ran off the stage with the rest of her group, flushed and smiling, high on that very specific kind of pride kids get when they've done something difficult and survived it. She spotted us immediately. "Did you see me?" she asked, breathless. "I didn't mess up the third line?" "You were perfect," I said, crouching down to her level. "Absolutely nailed it." My wife smiled too. Wide, public, maternal. For anyone watching, we still looked like a family. That was the part that made my stomach turn. We followed the flow of people into the hallway. The walls were still covered in drawings, stick families, bright suns, houses with smoke curling out of chimneys like nothing bad ever happens inside them. Nicole chattered happily, replaying moments from the performance like a sports commentator. "I think I sang louder than Liam," she said. "Did you hear me?" "Oh, I heard you," I said. "I think the gym heard you." She laughed and skipped ahead to look for her backpack. The second she was a few steps away, my wife's entire posture changed. The smile dropped, her shoulders stiffened, and then she turned to me. "What was that?" she asked. I blinked. "What was what?" "That thing you did," she said. "Back there." I tilted my head. "You're going to have to narrow it down. I did several things tonight." She didn't appreciate that. "You didn't say anything when I spoke to the teacher," she said. "You just sat there like—" She stopped herself, clearly choosing a different word. "Like you didn't care." I looked at her. "That's interesting," I said, "because from my perspective I was the only one who seemed to care about where we were." Her jaw tightened. "You embarrassed me." There it was. Not "I'm sorry." Not that was harsh. "You embarrassed me." I let the words sit between us, then nodded slowly. "Good to know," I said. "I'll make a note of that." She scoffed. "You think this is funny?" "No," I said. "I think it's informative." We stepped outside. The night air was cool, sharp. The parking lot was full of parents trying to locate their cars while their kids darted between headlights like suicidal fireflies. Nicole ran ahead, stopping next to our car. "I'm going to sit in the back," she announced. "I want to listen to the song again in my head." "Go for it," I said. She climbed in, humming softly to herself. The car door closed. The sound landed heavier than I expected. My wife turned to me fully now, no audience left. "You made it look like I was the bad guy," she said. I stared at her. "You said you didn't want to pretend," I replied. "I respected that." "That's not what I meant," she snapped. "You know what I meant." "No," I said calmly. "I really don't." She ran a hand through her hair, frustrated. "I was trying to be honest," she said. "Transparent, mature. At a school performance," I added. She waved that away. "I didn't yell. I didn't insult you. I didn't create drama." "You announced the end of our marriage next to a teacher holding a clipboard," I said. "We have different definitions of drama." She crossed her arms. "You could have handled it better." I leaned against the car and looked at her. "How?" I asked. "By arguing? By begging? By turning it into a spectacle?" She hesitated. "Well, because if I raised my voice," I continued, "I'd be the unstable husband. And if I tried to explain myself, I'd be the guy who can't accept reality." She didn't answer. I nodded. "Exactly." She looked away, toward the school building. "I didn't plan it like that," she said quietly. I waited. She sighed. "Okay, maybe I did. But you have to understand, I needed witnesses, so I wouldn't back down on my decision." There it was. Not love, not truth. Witnesses. "So that's what this was," I said. "Documentation." She shot me a look. "Don't twist it." "I'm not," I said. "I'm labeling it." She opened her mouth, then closed it again. Inside the car, Nicole was still humming. I straightened. "We'll talk about logistics later," I said. "Tonight was about her. And you already took more than your share. Half the school is already looking at us. Let's go home." She stared at me, searching for something. Anger, weakness, permission. She didn't find it. "Let them look. I don't care about them," she said. "We'll talk later." She got in the passenger seat. I drove. The silence on the way home wasn't loud. It was surgical. Nicole fell asleep halfway there, head tilted against the window, humming, fading into breath. I focused on the road, and for the first time that night, I felt something settle. Not grief. Resolution. The morning after didn't come with thunder or dramatic silence. It came with routine. Cereal bowls on the table, the low hum of the coffee machine, Nicole humming the same tune from the performance like nothing in the world had changed. That was the unsettling part. The house looked identical, sounded identical, but something fundamental had shifted, and everyone seemed to be pretending it hadn't. Nicole sat at the kitchen table, swinging her legs, reenacting parts of the performance with her spoon like it was a microphone. "I think I smiled too much," she said thoughtfully. "But Mrs. Carter said that's okay." "You smiled exactly the right amount," I said. "There's no such thing as too much smiling on a stage." She nodded, satisfied with that answer. My wife stood by the counter, scrolling on her phone, already mentally elsewhere. She looked lighter than she had in months, calmer, as if the night before had relieved her of a burden she'd been carrying alone. Watching her, I realized something uncomfortable. For her, the hardest part was already over. The announcement had been made. The image had been adjusted. Now, all that was left were logistics. When I walked Nicole to school, the building felt different. Not because anything had changed, but because I had. The same bright hallway, the same paper suns and stick figure families taped to the walls. The same smell of glue and disinfectant and faint panic. But now I knew how easily a place designed for safety could be used as a stage. Parents passed us, distracted, half awake, talking about schedules and lunches. Nicole ran ahead to join a friend, waving without looking back. That was when I felt it. The shift. It was subtle, almost polite. A little too much eye contact. A little too much softness in people's voices. The teacher from the night before, the one with the clipboard, the practiced calm, spotted me near the hallway and slowed down. She hesitated, then made a decision. "Good morning," she said. "Morning," I replied. There was a pause, not awkward, intentional, the kind people use when they're choosing their words carefully. "I just wanted to say," she began, lowering her voice slightly. "What happened last night shouldn't have been brought up here. That was private." Her eyes flicked down the hall to make sure Nicole wasn't nearby. I nodded. "I agree." She visibly relaxed. "I'm sorry you were put in that position," she added. "Schools are meant to be neutral ground." Neutral ground. I thanked her and walked on, but the phrase stuck with me. Neutral ground only stays neutral if everyone respects it. Over the next few days, I noticed patterns. Teachers greeting me a little more deliberately, staff smiling longer than necessary, conversations pausing when I approached, then resuming as if nothing had happened. No whispers, no gossip, just quiet awareness. The kind that says, "We saw something. We won't comment, but we saw it." My wife noticed it too, but interpreted it differently. "They're very supportive here," she said one evening, pouring herself a glass of water. I like that. Supportive. That word kept showing up in her vocabulary now. She talked about clarity, about honesty, about not wanting to model a false relationship for Nicole. Each phrase sounded rehearsed, not memorized, but refined, polished over time. One night, a few days later, she said it casually, like an afterthought. I think people respected me for it. I looked up from my coffee. For ending our marriage next to a stage decorated with paper suns? She rolled her eyes. You always reduce things to sound worse than they are? No, I said. I specify. She leaned back in her chair. I needed to stop pretending, she said. I've been doing that for years. That was new. You've been pretending? I asked. Because you were very convincing. She didn't smile. I've already told a few people, she added. I paused. A few people? Friends, she said quickly. They knew I was unhappy. They knew I wanted a fresh start. There it was. Fresh start. The phrase people use when they want permission to leave without admitting what they're leaving behind. That was when it became clear. The school night wasn't the beginning. It was the reveal. She had already prepared the narrative, already positioned herself as the honest one, already softened the ground so when she stepped away, she wouldn't fall. No affair, no secret man waiting in the wings, just a decision she made quietly and announced loudly. We started talking logistics like co-workers planning a handover, schedules, pickups, who would handle what. And then one night, in the middle of one of these sterile conversations, she said something that finally settled everything for me. I don't want Nicole growing up thinking this is normal. I looked at her. Standing next to a teacher and dismantling a family? I asked. Because that's the example you set. Her posture stiffened. I didn't humiliate you. I smiled faintly. No, I said. You just made sure I couldn't respond. She opened her mouth, then closed it. She didn't deny it. That silence told me more than any argument could. I didn't announce that I was filing for divorce. I didn't warn anyone. I didn't rehearse a speech in my head or wait for the right emotional moment. I just did it. The building was quiet in the way offices always are when people are dealing with endings. Fluorescent lights, neutral walls, forms that assume you've already made peace with the fact that something failed. I signed where they told me to sign, initialed where required, listened politely while someone explained timelines I already understood. When I walked out, I felt lighter than I had the night of the school performance. Not relieved, resolved. I didn't tell my wife right away, not out of strategy, not out of spite. I simply didn't feel the need to inform her of a decision she'd already staged publicly. A few days later, I was back at the school. Morning drop-off, controlled chaos. Kids everywhere, half asleep, backpacks dragging against the floor like anchors. Parents clustered in loose groups, exchanging the kind of small talk that's really just mutual survival signals. Nicole hopped out of the car and waved. Don't forget, I have art today, she said. The messy kind. I'll dress accordingly, I said. She laughed and ran toward the entrance without looking back. That was when someone stopped beside me. Hey. I turned. It was one of the other fathers. Same class. I recognized him by instinct. The nods, the brief smiles, the shared understanding that neither of us had time for prolonged conversation before work. Mid-40s, baseball cap, the kind of posture that suggested he'd learned to carry weight quietly. I was there, he said. I didn't ask where. I already knew. At the performance, he added. I don't usually stay the whole time, but my kid froze up on stage. I was sitting next to you. I nodded once. He hesitated, then continued. I'm not trying to get involved, he said, and you don't owe me a response. I waited. He leaned in slightly, lowering his voice. Not conspiratorial, just respectful. Silence is strength, he said, but only once. I felt something in my chest tighten, not defensively, but attentively. If you swallow this now, he continued, looking me straight in the eyes, she'll do it again and again. There was no judgment in his tone, no anger, just certainty. He stepped back, giving me space. That's all, he said. I learned it the hard way. Then he turned and walked toward the entrance, disappearing into the stream of parents and children like he hadn't just handed me a warning I couldn't ignore. I stood there for a moment longer than necessary. The words stayed with me. Silence is strength, but only once. That was the part my wife didn't understand. My silence at the performance wasn't surrender. It was containment. But containment isn't meant to be permanent. That evening, when I told her I'd filed, she stared at me like she'd missed a step in a routine she thought she'd choreographed. You already did it? She asked. Yes. Her brow furrowed. You didn't talk to me first. I tilted my head. You already talked for both of us. She laughed once, sharp, incredulous. So that's it? You're just done? I'm done letting moments like that happen, I said. That's not the same thing. She crossed her arms. You're overreacting. I nodded. That's what people say when the reaction isn't theirs to control. She didn't argue after that. Not because she agreed, but because she finally understood something had shifted. The next time we were at the school, things felt different again. Not tense, defined. Teachers were polite, parents were neutral. The building returned to being what it was meant to be. A place for children, not adult performances. And for the first time since that night, I felt certain of one thing. She didn't just leave me. She chose a place where I wasn't allowed to respond, and assumed that meant I never would. Months passed, not in a dramatic montage, just quietly, the way real endings usually happen. Nicole adjusted faster than anyone expected. Kids always do. They sense stability more than they need explanations. 2 houses, 2 routines, fewer arguments, clearer rules. One evening, after a school pickup, the same teacher smiled at me and said, "Nicole's doing really well." I thanked her. That was it. No history, no context, just a child, learning. Sometimes I think about that night, the stage, the paper suns, the moment my wife chose an audience instead of a conversation. I understand now why it stayed with me. She didn't just leave me. She tried to end our marriage in a place where voices are meant to be gentle and adults are supposed to behave. That wasn't honesty, it was control. Silence was strength. Once. Walking away was the rest. And if there's one thing I learned from all of it, it's this. If someone needs witnesses to leave you, they're not looking for truth. They're looking for permission.